Keith Urban is on stage for his first show since Nicole Kidman filed for divorce.
Golden couple had separated after 19 years of marriage.
Breakups are never easy, but when it happens to a couple, the world thought would last forever. Like Nicole and Keith, it hits differently. After his split from Nicole Kidman, yes, they've just been separated, Keith Urban opened up in a way few expected, sharing a confession that peeled back the polished image of their relationship. What was this sudden filing of divorce about? Who would want to lose the Nicole Kidman? Let's dig into this another explosive Hollywood end of an era. Keith Urban's POV. On September 30th of this year, actress Nicole Kidman filed for divorce and set shockwaves among fans.
Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban have separated.
And she had something to say. But wait, Keith dropped some headlines too, on the status of their marriage way before all this happened. When Keith admitted he had blown his marriage to Nicole Kidman, it wasn't some polished Hollywood statement. It was just raw and straight to the point. For years, people looked at them as proof that a big movie star and a country singer could actually make it work. And then, with one short line, he pulled the curtain back and said what no one expected. It fell apart, and it was mostly on him. This wasn't totally out of the blue, though. If you look back, the signs were there. Remember that 2024 AFI tribute where Keith got teary-eyed and thanked Nicole for rescuing him during his struggles? At the time, everyone thought it was sweet. Now, after the split, it kind of feels different. Like maybe he was already admitting he'd leaned too much on her. And deep down, he knew it. What surprised people wasn't just what he said, but how he said it. No press release, no lawyerly statement. It was Keith himself, talking like a guy who just couldn't hold it in anymore. "I blew it to smithereens," he confessed. Simple, messy, and painfully honest. He didn't try to spin it or point fingers. For once, he wasn't hiding behind his music or charm. He just owned it. And the timing? Well, that made it sting even more. By then, the divorce papers were already filed. Fans and the media were buzzing with theories about missed red carpets, awkward interviews, even talk of another woman. But Keith's confession cut through all that noise. It didn't confirm every rumor, but it made one thing clear. Nicole wasn't the only one carrying the weight of their marriage. People reacted fast. Some thought it was refreshing. Finally, a celebrity taking responsibility instead of dodging. Others rolled their eyes, saying it was too late to start being honest. And then there were the fans who just felt sad. After all, if Keith and Nicole couldn't make it, what chance did any Hollywood couple have? For Nicole, though, it had to sting. Reports say she really did fight to keep things together, trying to protect their kids, standing by him during rehab and career dips. Hearing him admit he blew it probably wasn't shocking to her, but it sure made it official in front of the world. At the end of the day, Keith's confession wasn't just about regret. It was about finally saying out loud what he'd probably known for a long time. Whether it was closure, guilt, or just needing to get it off his chest, it opened the door to all the other questions people are still asking. Because sometimes, the hardest part of a breakup isn't admitting it's over, it's admitting why. And in Keith's case, some people can't help wondering if why really comes down to just the marriage or maybe to someone else. Wait, is there someone involved? The other woman. Whenever a big Hollywood couple calls it quits, you know what comes next. Rumors. And in Keith and Nicole's case, they didn't waste any time. Almost immediately, whispers started about a so-called other woman. Was there really someone else? Or was this just speculation doing what speculation always does best, filling in blanks with juicy headlines? One name kept popping up, Maggie Baugh, Keith's 25-year-old guitarist. She'd been performing with him on tour, and fans noticed little moments that felt, let's just say, interesting. At one show, Keith even switched up lyrics in The Fighter and used her name instead.
People were saying that he changed the lyric while singing with Maggie, and that was evidence that they were a thing.
Videos of him pointing at her on stage quickly made their way around TikTok, and suddenly, people were convinced the connection went beyond just music. Of course, the internet ran with it. Memes, speculation, insider stories, you name it. Maggie's dad even tossed a bit of fuel on the fire with a comment that wasn't exactly a denial. And just like that, what could have been nothing more than stage banter started to look like something bigger. Here's the tricky part, though. Nobody has actually confirmed anything. Neither Keith nor Maggie has said a word to make the rumors official. And Nicole, completely silent, which, honestly, just makes people speculate more. At the same time, the timeline of their split gave the whispers even more weight. Nicole officially filed for divorce on September 30th, marking that date as the official separation after 19 years of marriage. She cited irreconcilable differences and ongoing marital difficulties, but insiders hinted the two had already been living separate lives long before the paperwork hit. According to those close to the couple, Keith had quietly set up his own place, and to many around them, the split felt kind of inevitable. Still, the rumors about another woman were what cut deepest. Some sources close to Nicole suggested she felt blindsided and even betrayed, especially after standing by Keith through his toughest years. Fans, too, couldn't help but connect the dots. His confession about blowing the marriage, the sudden divorce filing, the chatter about Maggie, and the timing of it all. Coincidence? Maybe, but it also made his words sound heavier, like he was already carrying the weight of something the rest of us were only starting to piece together. But then again, only Keith knows. And here's the bigger picture. The other woman doesn't always have to mean an actual person. Sometimes it's a career, fame, or demons that never fully disappear. In Keith's case, his grueling tour schedule, the spotlight, and his well-documented struggles with addiction could all play that role. Whether literal or symbolic, though, the whispers cracked open the glossy, picture-perfect image of a couple people thought had it all. Which raises the next question. If the cracks were there, when did they first start showing? The fall of the power couple. When people talk about power couples in Hollywood, there's always a short list. And for nearly 20 years, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman were sitting pretty near the top. Glamorous actress, check country music superstar, check cute hand-holding on red carpets and kissing in front of flashbulbs, double check. They weren't just a couple. They were the brand of couple that made people go, see, true love can totally survive fame.
We found each other in this huge world and we're crazy about each other.
But here's the thing about power couples. What looks shiny in public doesn't always line up with what's happening at home. And with Keith and Nicole, those cracks didn't just appear out of nowhere. Nope, they crept in slowly, like little hairline fractures in glass. Hard to notice at first, but once you see them, you can't unsee them. A lot of it came down to schedules. Keith was basically living on the road, city to city, stage to stage. Nicole was wrapped up in film shoots, premieres, and press tours. Add 2 daughters into that mix, and suddenly their perfect setup looks more like 2 calendars fighting for space. How do you build a cozy home life when both of you are constantly somewhere else? Sure, they tried. They had reunions, big romantic gestures, and those red carpet smiles that convinced fans everything was peachy. But insiders later admitted those were more like quick fixes, band-aids slapped on bigger problems. The real distance wasn't just miles apart, it was emotional. And fans? Oh, they started picking up on it. Nicole showing up solo at a few events, Keith spotted at others without her. Interviews that used to be filled with gushy quotes suddenly felt a little flat. At first, nobody wanted to believe it. Everyone has off days, people said. But looking back, yeah, the signs were there. Then came the silence, and silence can be louder than any statement. No more constant mentions of each other, no more playful inside jokes in interviews, just this quiet gap that was impossible to ignore. So when Keith finally confessed that he had blown the marriage, it wasn't some shocking plot twist. It was more like, okay, curtain lifted. We see it now. The admission wasn't about rumor or speculation. It was him admitting what people had already started piecing together. This relationship wasn't as unshakable as it once looked. Of course, the whispers about someone else didn't help. Whether there was really another woman or not, the timing was enough to sting. And for Nicole, people close to her said it felt like betrayal, salt in an already open wound. The irony, the exact things that made them such a powerhouse, Keith's music career, Nicole's Hollywood star power, were also the things pulling them apart. For years, they juggled it beautifully, but eventually, the scale tipped too far. He had demands pulling him one way, she had demands pulling her another, and their marriage was left stretched in the middle. The saddest part? Looking back, it all feels kind of inevitable. Friends reportedly saw it coming long before the divorce papers were filed. Keith quietly moving into his own place was apparently the final straw, the silent confirmation that this wasn't just a rough patch. By the time the announcement hit, insiders weren't shocked. It was only the fans still holding on to the fairy tale. And that's the real sting of watching them fall. For us, it wasn't just another celebrity breakup. It was the gut-punch realization that even the couples we point to as proof that love can survive everything are still, at the end of the day, human. If they couldn't make it, who can? Still, before we get too lost in the heartbreak, it's worth rewinding to how this all started. Because before the cracks, before the rumors, and before the "I blew it" confession, there was a spark, one that turned into one of Hollywood's most beloved love stories. The romance everyone rooted for. Before the drama, before the headlines, before the whole confession thing, there was the spark. And honestly, it was pretty cute. Picture it, 2005, a Hollywood event celebrating Australians in Los Angeles. Nicole Kidman, freshly single, rebuilding her world after her split from Tom Cruise. Keith Urban, already a country star, but still the low-key Aussie guy with a guitar and a grin. They meet. Sparks fly. The end, right? Not quite. Here's the kicker. Nicole was into him right away. She's admitted she thought he was dreamy from the start. But Keith? Oh, he pulled the classic wait 3 months to call move. Yep, he literally sat on Nicole Kidman's phone number for ages because he was too shy. Imagine having Nicole Kidman's digits and just not dialing. Bold strategy, Keith. When he did finally call, though, things moved fast. Their first conversations weren't small talk.
2005, they kind of talked on the phone after that. They grew closer. Then, though, on Nicole's 38th birthday in June of 2005.
They were deep, hours-long, where have you been all my life type chats. By the time they went public as a couple, people already sensed this wasn't your typical Hollywood fling. Fast forward to June 2006, and boom, they're married in Sydney.
The Aussie power couple tied the knot in a traditional Catholic ceremony at Sydney's Cardinal Soretti Chapel.
Nicole in her gorgeous Balenciaga gown, Keith singing to her, because of course he did, he's Keith Urban, and fans everywhere swooning over the fairy tale. And here's the thing, it wasn't just the wedding glow. These two actually looked like the real deal. Nicole would gush about how Keith made her feel grounded and safe, while Keith called Nicole his savior, crediting her with pulling him through his darkest struggles, including addiction. That's not just romance. That's ride or die. For years, they were Hollywood's favorite, look, it can work, couple. Red carpets, always hand-holding, interviews, constant sweet shout-outs. Keith even wrote love songs that fans swore were about Nicole. And through it all, they built a family with their 2 daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, often describing home life as their calm in the middle of chaos. Basically, if you needed proof that love could survive fame, money, rehab, and paparazzi, Keith and Nicole were Exhibit A, which is exactly why the cracks in their marriage feel so jarring now. Because let's be real, when you build your love story up to fairy tale levels, the ending, if it comes, always hits a little harder. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's zoom in on the middle years, the day-to-day of their marriage, the highs, the lows, and the quiet shifts that eventually set the stage for everything that followed. 19 years, together in the spotlight. If there was ever a woman who knew the highs and lows of love in the public eye, it's Nicole Kidman. By the time she met Keith Urban, She wasn't some wide-eyed actress new to the Hollywood circus. She had already lived through a high-profile marriage to Tom Cruise.
Nicole Kidman makes a rare comment about her marriage to Tom Cruise. When it comes to Nicole and Tom's marriage, the book is closed.
The divorce that dominated headlines and the "what's next for Nicole" phase that followed. So when Keith came into the picture, it wasn't just another romance. For her, it was a second chance at the kind of love she'd almost given up on. And boy, did they sell it well. Nicole would light up when she talked about Keith, describing him as her rock, her anchor, the guy who made her feel safe after years of uncertainty. Fans loved that about them. It wasn't just red carpet sparkle. It looked like something real. She wasn't afraid to gush in interviews, and he wasn't shy about writing songs that sounded suspiciously like love letters to her. For a while, it felt like they cracked the code to Hollywood marriage. Genuine affection wrapped in A-list glam. Nicole herself often admitted she wanted stability, something lasting and grounded, and Keith seemed to fit that picture. She talked about how she dreamed of a simple family life, even in the middle of a career that had her flying across the globe. And when their 2 daughters came along, it looked like she finally had everything she'd ever wanted. Love, family, and success, all rolled into one. But here's where it gets complicated. Marriage in the spotlight isn't just about love, it's about logistics. And in Nicole's case, those logistics were brutal. Acting doesn't exactly run on a 9-to-5 schedule. One day, she's in Australia shooting a period drama. The next, she's in Europe doing press. And after that, she's back in the US juggling another project. Add Keith's tour schedule into the mix. And it was basically 2 people living parallel lives with only occasional overlaps. Insiders say Nicole worked hard to keep it together. She fought for the relationship, even adjusting her career at times to make more space for her family. She was known to bring the kids along on sets, rearrange press junkets, and carve out time for Keith whenever possible. But no matter how much she stretched, the gap between them didn't seem to close. And let's not forget the public pressure. Every interview, every red carpet, every magazine spread, they weren't just 2 people in love. They were Nicole and Keith, the couple that fans projected their hopes onto. That's a lot to carry when real life behind the scenes doesn't look nearly as polished. For Nicole, the unraveling of the marriage wasn't just about losing a husband, it was about losing the dream she thought she'd finally achieved. Reports suggested she was blindsided by Keith's confession that he had blown the marriage, especially with rumors of someone else swirling around. Whether or not another woman was involved, for Nicole, it felt like betrayal. After years of fighting for stability, the rug had been pulled out from under her. Still, if there's one thing Nicole Kidman has always been, it's resilient. She's survived heartbreak before, and while this one stung deeply, those close to her say she's determined not to let it define her. And that's part of why fans rally around her so fiercely, because she's not just a Hollywood star. She's a woman who keeps picking herself up, no matter how many times life tries to knock her down. How did Nicole's past shape the woman she was before Keith ever came into the picture? Nicole Kidman's past before Urban. Before Keith Urban ever strummed his way into her life, Nicole Kidman had already lived through enough drama and reinvention to fill a dozen Hollywood scripts. Her story wasn't just about fame. It was about resilience, reinvention, and survival in an industry and in relationships that can be brutal. Most people still remember her first big public love story, Tom Cruise. Nicole met Tom in 1989 on the set of Days of Thunder.
Yes.
What?
You're hurting.
Okay, call the police, but I'm not leaving till you talk.
I got nothing to say.
Well,
And what followed was one of Hollywood's most famous marriages of the 90s. They quickly became the golden couple, red carpets, blockbuster movies, magazine covers. To the outside world, it looked like a fairy tale. But behind the scenes, their marriage was complicated. The pair adopted 2 children together, Isabella and Connor, but by 2001, the marriage had unraveled. Their divorce was messy, public, and left Nicole reeling. She was only 33 at the time, suddenly single, and thrust into a new chapter where she had to figure out who she was without Tom Cruise by her side. In later interviews, she admitted she had gotten married young and had to rediscover herself after their split. That period of her life shaped the woman who eventually met Keith Urban. Professionally, though, Nicole was thriving. The early 2000s were a defining moment for her career. She won an Oscar for her haunting performance in The Hours.
I have such appreciation and gratitude for this.
2002, proving once and for all that she wasn't just Tom Cruise's wife, she was one of the most talented actresses of her generation. Films like Moulin Rouge, The Others, and Cold Mountain solidified her reputation as an actress with both range and staying power. Still, behind the glamour, she often hinted at loneliness. She spoke about wanting a family, about longing for the stability of love that felt lasting. That's why, when Keith Urban came along, it wasn't just another romance. It was a chance at the kind of grounded relationship she'd been searching for. In hindsight, you can see why Nicole's marriage to Keith mattered so much to her fans. It wasn't just a country star falling for a Hollywood icon. It was Nicole, who had been through heartbreak, public divorce, and the struggle of rebuilding, finally finding someone who seemed to balance out her world. Of course, knowing where her story is now, that backstory feels even more poignant. Nicole had already lived through one painful, high-profile divorce before Keith. And while she built an incredible life and career on the other side of it, fans can't help but wonder, how many times can someone pick up the pieces and start again? The weight of fame. One of the big reasons Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban became such a magnetic couple was that their love story played out against the backdrop of two skyrocketing careers.
Hollywood was shocked when news recently broke that Nicole and Keith were calling it quits on their 20-year relationship.
She was Hollywood royalty. He was Nashville's golden boy. Together, they were the ultimate crossover, a blend of red carpets and rhinestones, film premieres and country tours. Nicole's star power had been solidified long before she met Keith. By the early 2000s, she wasn't just a respected actress, she was one of the actresses. With an Oscar win under her belt and a filmography full of daring roles, she'd carved out a reputation for choosing parts that challenged her and proved her range. From Moulin Rouge to The Hours, Nicole wasn't afraid of taking risks, and her career thrived because of it. Keith's journey looked different, but the grind was just as intense. After moving to Nashville from Australia, he fought his way through the competitive country music scene. His breakout came in the early 2000s, with hits like Somebody Like You and You'll Think of Me, turning him into one of country's most recognizable voices. By the time he met Nicole in 2005, he was already selling out tours, racking up awards, and building a reputation as one of the most charismatic performers in the industry. Put the two together, and you had fireworks. Nicole brought the Hollywood glamour. Keith brought the down-to-earth charm, and fans ate it up. They looked unstoppable. A couple who had not only conquered their respective worlds, but also managed to find each other in the chaos. But here's the catch. Fame is a double-edged sword. On one side, it gave them a life most people could only dream of. On the other, it created a schedule and lifestyle that made building a quiet, ordinary family life nearly impossible. Keith's career kept him on the road for months at a time, hopping from city to city, living out of hotels, and pouring himself into late-night performances. Nicole's world was equally demanding. Long days on set, international film shoots, promotional tours that had her zigzagging across continents. Individually, those careers were impressive. Together, they were exhausting. Insiders often said it felt like Nicole and Keith were living parallel lives, deeply committed to each other, but constantly pulled in opposite directions by their work. Even when they did make time for each other, it often involved grand gestures, a quick flight to meet between projects, a surprise visit to a film set, or appearing at each other's premieres. Sweet? Absolutely. Sustainable? Not so much. And then there's the spotlight itself. Fame doesn't just put pressure on schedules, it puts pressure on people. Every missed event, every solo red carpet, every slightly awkward interview became fodder for speculation. Fans expected perfection because, for so long, Keith and Nicole seemed to deliver it. But behind the scenes, the balance was delicate. And every year their careers grew, that balance got harder to maintain. It's ironic, really. The very thing that made them such a fascinating couple to watch was also the thing that made their marriage so vulnerable. The actress chasing scripts that would challenge her. The country star chasing songs that would resonate with arenas full of fans. They were both doing what they loved, and in the process, slowly drifting apart. Looking back, their careers weren't just part of their story. They were almost like a third character in the marriage. Sometimes it brought them together, sometimes it drove them apart, but it was always there, shaping the way their relationship unfolded. On to the next chapter. The divorce papers might be signed, but the story of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban doesn't end there. It just moves into a new chapter. And like any high-profile split, this one is going to be just as closely watched as the marriage itself. For Nicole, the focus now is crystal clear: her daughters. Friends say she had been dreading the moment their separation went public, but now that the world knows, she's oddly calm. She's surprisingly level-headed, one insider explained, noting that the actress is choosing to put her energy into the future rather than the past. At the top of that priority list are her two girls, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. Nicole has always been open about how much motherhood means to her, and if there's one thing she's determined to protect during all this, it's their sense of stability. That doesn't mean it's easy. Divorce is messy, even without the tabloids dissecting every move. But Nicole has weathered public heartbreak before, and she's leaning into the same resilience that's carried her through other tough chapters. Instead of dwelling on betrayal or what-ifs, she's already turning the page, looking ahead to film projects, family time, and, most importantly, building a grounded home base for her daughters. Keith's post-divorce story comes with its own twist: money, specifically the prenup. Back in 2006, when they tied the knot, the couple signed a marriage agreement with one unusual clause. Reports suggest that Keith would be entitled to $600,000 for every year he stayed sober. Considering his well-documented struggles with addiction in the past, it was both a financial safeguard and, in some ways, a symbol of Nicole's support. And here's the kicker: Keith has reportedly been sober since entering rehab just months after their wedding. Do the math, and that adds up to around $11 million. Not exactly pocket change. It's an odd little detail in a very public split, but it also shows how their marriage was built on both love and very real attempts at accountability. Nicole once staged an intervention for Keith early in their relationship, something he later credited with saving him not just personally, but professionally too. He said more than once that her timing was life-changing. Everything was just designed, I believe, for that moment to fuse us together, he told Oprah back in 2010. So where does that leave Keith now? In some ways, with a clean slate, financially secure, still headlining shows, and if his track record is anything to go by, likely to channel the turbulence of his personal life into his music. After all, some of his most powerful songs have come from raw, personal places. Fans are already speculating about how the breakup might influence his next album. For both of them, co-parenting will inevitably become the next big challenge. Nicole and Keith have always been fiercely protective of their daughter's privacy.
Keith Urban, Nicole Kidman split, and footage has surfaced of a concert.
So don't expect a flood of family drama to play out on social media. Still, insiders say they're both committed to keeping things as smooth as possible for the kids. Whatever their differences as a couple, they've always shared a strong bond as parents, and friends expect that to remain their common ground. The irony, of course, is that their marriage started with an intervention and ends with a clause designed around sobriety. In between was nearly 2 decades of love, family, and hard-won stability. And while the ending may not have been the fairy tale fans hoped for, both Nicole and Keith are stepping into their next chapters with a mix of grace, grit, and yes, a little bit of tabloid drama. Because if there's one thing this story has proven, it's that even the perfect couple is still just 2 people figuring out life, and now figuring out how to live it separately. In the end, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's story reminds us that even the most glamorous couples face struggles the rest of us can relate to. Love, distance, and the challenge of keeping it all together. Their journey may have taken separate paths now, but the fascination with their story isn't going anywhere. If you want more deep dives into the real stories behind Hollywood headlines, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for what's next.